can hate me now.
Come on, people.
But I
Ain't no
won't
half
stop
stepping.
now. But I won't stop now.
You know
You
how
can hate
step-
me now.
You can hate them. Yeah.
Hate me.
You can hate them for real because they up in here getting it in. They fighting over football. It always comes back to that. It always comes back to that with Big Rue and Carlton Banks. We're going to go back to the National Basketball Association with K-Dub. We wanted to talk about injuries. There's a lot of injuries going on in the National Basketball Association. K-Dub, I'm going to ask you first and then you throw it to Ro. First question I want to ask is, do you think that the condensed schedule has anything to do with some of the injuries? Because we've seen some really bad ones come about in the last couple of weeks.
My personal opinion, I do think that the season, the condensed season, and having to kind of quickly get yourself into shape for all of those that didn't think that there was going to be a season, I think that it's a contributing factor to a lot of the injuries. Would I say that it's the sole number one for all of the injuries? No, but I would say that it does play some part in it. Well, I would definitely like to hear your analysis on that, be it that during the time your rookie year, if I'm not mistaken, was the last time that there was a strike. There was only 50 games played, and you got to see firsthand how some people dealt with the shortened season.
It was 50 games in the same amount of time, so it was still a similar process. So like there wasn't 5 or 6 times a year where you had to play 3 games in 3 nights. I mean, that was very, very rare back then. I think because of the 66 games, it didn't give athletes enough recovery time. And when you're playing that many games and you're playing that many minutes, it really takes a toll on your body. And I think it was a bad idea for those guys to really play that many games in such a short period of time.
So would you have
didn't really have control over it?
So would you have extended the season, or in your opinion?
I think it should have been this would have been the 1 year when I remember sometime in the past where they was talking about putting a cap on how many minutes certain guys play. I think this would have been a good year to try and use that and try to make a mold of what that could possibly be like, so that guys' careers would be, longer than, and less injury-free. This would have been a year to try to implement something like that, where you put a cap on your star players only being able to play 36 minutes in the game, or be fined, or, just because of the condensed schedule and the amount of minutes. You have some guys that were averaging, 39 to 40, 42 minutes. I mean, that's a lot of minutes, that many nights that you're playing in the games.
Let me ask you this, Ro. I'm watching Derrick Rose, Iman Shumpert, and Baron Davis essentially tear their knees apart to shreds, particularly Baron Davis. His was just terrible, hard to watch. They're basically in the case of Shumpert and Baron Davis, they're bringing the ball up the court. That's all they're doing. They're bringing the ball up the court. Have you, in your time when you were in the league and just in watching ball since you've been playing, have you ever seen such a rash of just terrible knee injuries just pop up across any league in such a short amount of time? And can we point directly to the condensed schedule, or is it just, freak of nature?
In my opinion, I think it's really not more than just the NBA. I mean, when I was young, I didn't play as many games as Iman Shumpert played in AAU. You know what I mean? I didn't play as many games as Baron Davis. I mean, Baron Davis is old, but he's not old. You know what I mean? He just came out younger. But AAU, these kids are playing 4 and 5 games in a day. So by the time they're 30, their mileage is you may need a Mercedes-Benz or a Porsche, but you still got 300,000 miles on your legs.
Right.
So I think the injuries stem more from just playing in the NBA this many games. I think it stems from the amount of games they're playing at 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 years old, and the mileage is running up a little bit higher than it would normally if you played the typical AAU 1, maybe 2 games in a day. I mean, I've been to some AAU tournaments where some games started at 11 o'clock at night.
Right.
And we didn't get over, and the team turned around and played at 9, 10 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
So it's almost like you get punished for winning.
Right.
I mean, you don't play more games when you win. You're supposed to play less games when you win.
Right. Well, speaking of those injuries, that is a perfect segue to the Chicago series, because I'm watching them play and I watched them lose their, I mean, I guess you could say definitely their best player and one of their best players in Rose and Noah. Dub, I'm gonna have you start on this one. How do you see this series now as opposed to how we saw it prior to those injuries? Do you think they even have a chance to come back from 3-1?
Yeah. I still think that they do have a chance. It's a fighter's chance, but they do have a chance right now. Philadelphia is 3-1 going into Chicago. To be honest, granted they've lost their best player on their team and one of the I would say glue guys on their team with Joakim Noah going down to an ankle injury, but you never know what can happen. They're going to be home. They play tonight at 9:30. They're going to be home, so the crowd is going to be behind them. Once again, making that statement like I stated about your bench players. A lot of your role players play better when they're home. It could be a different scenario, a different situation after tonight. They could go back to Philly, it being a 3-2 situation, and then at that point, it's just basically who wants it more, I would say. I think that Philadelphia cannot come into this game as playing as if they know that they're going to win, that they're going to move on. I would think that they have to walk into this game as hungry as they were when they went into Chicago in the first game. Granted, they didn't win, but still going into that game hungry. I don't think Philadelphia would do themselves any right by just resting on their laurels, being up 3-1.
Bro, what are your thoughts?
I think Philly's a very young and exciting team to watch. They have a very good core group of guys, of young guys, along with veterans, and Elton Brand, and then with a guy like Iguodala, and I mean, their guards are unbelievable. And Holiday, who's one of the best offensive guards I think in the league, and they are a very ugly team. The way that they play, they're not fun to watch, but they're scrappy, and they're not really exciting to watch, but they play very, very hard. And this is coming from a team whose second leading scorer comes off the bench, and the guard, what's his name, Lewis Williams. So, with that being said, I mean, Thaddeus Young is really coming into his own as well, and I think from a matchup standpoint, Chicago, they play hard at every position too. The reason you watch Chicago is because of Derrick Rose. You take Derrick Rose out next, they're Philadelphia 76ers. They play hard, but they don't have that one guy that everybody just wants to come see,
right,
like the Derrick Rose. So that's why I think the matchup is pretty even. I think Philadelphia just been squeezing it out a little bit more because their chemistry is better because they have their whole team. You're trying to play without your best player in Chicago, and I think that's been the difference in the series.
And I'm glad that you said that, because really you take Derrick Rose off the Bulls, and basically they're looking at a mirror of the Philadelphia 76ers. I mean, because
exactly.
I think Derrick Rose really was the only piece that made Chicago better than the Sixers.
An elite team. Right?
Yeah, and it's just like, Philly just wants it more at this point. They're up 3-1. I expect them to win it, but I'm shocked that they're up 3-1. But I guess you realize how important Derrick Rose is to a team like the Bulls when you fighting teams like the Sixers, because I believe 2 weeks before the regular season, we're talking about who would New York want, Chicago or Miami. I think the question should have been, who does Chicago want? And they probably would have said, yeah, we'd rather have New York than have Philly, because Philly plays our style, and really their only difference is Derrick Rose.
But let me ask you this. Hold on. Are you saying that Derrick Rose is the team? Because the same Derrick Rose who missed how many games this season beat the Knicks, beat Miami. I mean, come on now. Don't sell Chicago short.
I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah, but that's the regular season. When you look at teams, there's two different teams. You got playoff teams and you have regular season teams. When you're winning games with your role players, 9 times out of 10 they're not going to be as successful in the playoffs because the stakes are higher, and you get to prepare for those guys a little bit more because you're playing the same team night in and night out. So your preparation is a little bit more focused, and you get to have better defensive strategies against players who aren't necessarily killers. You can defend Kobe all you want. He's going to get his. It's just a matter of how the other players on the team play, and that's the difference in the playoffs and regular season.
Correct. And then you have a team like Philly who has absolutely nothing to lose. They're playing balls to the wall, basically.
Coaching staff. They have a great coaching staff, and they have very young, hungry players.
I mean, they expected to get swept, and if they had got swept, nobody would have cared. They won one game. It's 1-1. Wait a minute. What's going on now? You basically gave Philly an average team confidence that they can win, and that's just like an NCAA tournament. You give that team that shouldn't win any confidence, you never know what can happen. They just start making everything. They start getting the balls going their way, and it's crazy.
Especially when they got good chemistry, and Philly has good chemistry with their young players. When you look at a team like Chicago, you look at most teams, when you play Chicago, when Derrick Rose drives the ball, they're looking to double team Derrick Rose sometimes. Who do you have on your team that commands that double team where your role players are going to get the open shots that they normally used to get? You don't have to double team a guy when Derrick Rose is not on the floor, so it changes the dynamic of the defense. As defensive strategies now, guys got to be able to create their own shots. And if you look at the Bulls team, Derrick Rose created shots from everyone, and they're missing that. They don't have a guy that can create the shots to make everyone else's job easier.
And Boozer's playing like a bum.
Hey, Ro.
That's the Duke guy. That's
Hey, Ro. Let's.
Sorry about that, but
Ro,
I mean,
Let's move on to a series that features two teams that you know intimately. You got the Celtics playing against the Hawks. Celtics came on midway in the season. I'll be honest with you, after watching them early in the season, I just didn't see them making the kind of run that they made late. And then, of course, they're looking pretty good now in the playoffs, Ro. Tell me what your thoughts are with the Atlanta Hawks and the Boston Celtics series. Ro, you there?
You want me to go first on this one?
Yeah, Ro, go ahead. Go ahead, Ro.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, as far as the Celtics, when we talked about those playoff teams, the Celtics built their team for the playoffs. So they're not really worried. They could be an 8 seed, and the Celtics are going to be as dominating as they could possibly be. I don't think the seed that they're in really matters. Because like I said, they've always built their teams to be winners in the playoffs over the last probably 5 or 6 years. And all Doc Rivers teams have been built like that. But when you look at the Hawks are very, very young. The Hawks have some really, really good talent. But what the Hawks do is they don't run. They're a team that should run and be flying up and down the floor, shoot the ball quick, getting more shots up than the other team. Because when they do that, they're very effective. But when they're not a half-court team, because in half-court team, all they do is play one-on-one. They don't move the ball from one side to the other. So it makes their game a little bit harder when you have athletes that aren't running. And you look at a team like the Celtics, their game plan is working perfectly against the Hawks because when the Boston Celtics score, it eliminates the transition for the Hawks. So the Celtics are really shooting a high percentage right now. So it limits the Hawks running opportunities, and they have to play in half court as a result of it. And we all know that the Celtics has one of the best half court defenses in the game. Anchored by Kevin Garnett. No one on that, and especially when you throw a guy in the mix who's really elevated his game, and Avery Bradley. He's one of the best perimeter defenders in the league this year, along with another young player, Iman Shumpert from the Knicks, who's injured now. But they've made a name for themselves on the defensive end, and we've seen that with Avery Bradley guard the Dwayne Wades and guys that he's been really making it tough for. He's not locking them up. He's really making it tough for them to be who they really are night in and night out.